A full house. Okay, so it is 6 p.m. So I will call this meeting to order. Any declaration of interest or general nature thereof, we are dealing with the T-2020-002 County Road, or sorry, Highway 32 first. Does anybody have a declaration? If I can't see Councillor Gorell and I can't see Deputy Mayor Lackey. So if you put your hand up, I can't see you. Just in case, if you need to declare an interest, please unmute yourself and do so. Otherwise, we'll move forward with the purpose of the meeting, which, as I stated before, was T-2020-002, 3241 Highway 32, County Road 32. Proposed Rogers Wireless Telecommunications guide tower installation. But first, before we go forward, I'll read, as I always do before all our planning meetings, the disclaimer. Personal information collected at this public hearing is collected under the authority of the Planning Act and will be used to assist in making a decision on this matter. All names, addresses, opinions, and comments are collected and form part of the minutes which are available to the public. Questions regarding this collection should be forwarded to the Director of Planning. The purpose of the public meetings is to present planning applications in a public forum as required by the Planning Act. Following presentations will be by the applicant or staff. Council members will have an opportunity to ask questions for clarification or further information. The meeting will then be open to the public for comments and questions. When you speak, please provide your name and address for recording in the minutes. All comments should be directed to the chair of the meeting. The applicant will be provided the opportunity to address public questions once all members of the public have made their submissions. For the applications being presented tonight, a report and recommendation are being presented to council. Following a council decision, notice will be circulated in accordance with the Planning Act. If a person or public body would have the ability to appeal the decision of council to the local planning appeal tribunal, but the person or public body does not make oral submissions at the public meeting or make written submissions to the township before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision. Having said that, we'll move forward with T-2020-002. Madam Planner, did you want to speak and bring that forward, or would you like, do you have a synopsis?
I can give a brief overview. I wasn't certain if the applicant wanted to give some introductory comments.
Good evening, everybody. It's Christian here. I do have an overview prepared that I'd be happy to provide, yes.
Go ahead then. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Just give me one quick second. And I probably use Zoom less than you do, so make sure this is going. So are you able to see the PowerPoint now?
Yes.
We can see it, but it's not in presentation slideshow view. We can still see the side with all the slides on the side on the left-hand side of the screen.
Yeah, that's okay. I can fix that quickly,
okay.
I think. I hope.
There we go.
Oh, no.
Looks
is that good?
great. Yep.
Okay. My side, I see the speaker's notes, so I just want to make sure. All right, thanks again, everyone. Yeah, we're picking up where we left off about a year ago, where we started this process and had to put everything on hold, like a lot of other things with COVID. So I'll just kind of run through an overview, and then of course, open to any questions and comments from anybody on council or the public for anybody who has joined. So as you mentioned, this is a Rogers Tower that we're proposing. We refer to the general area as Highway 15 and Highway 32. It's a little bit south of Highway 15. That's just a general reference internally. The proposed tower will be located at 3241 Highway 32 in Sealy's Bay. And the general idea is to improve the service along Highway 32. There's been noted quite a significant deficiency in that area. So this should make a really big difference to the members of the community and of course, anybody who's traveling through, both from a communication and from a safety standpoint. In terms of what the tower will actually be, it's a guide tower, and for people not familiar with the terminology, rather than self-supported where it's a single structure that stands on its own, a guide tower has guy wires that anchor it to the ground, much like you see telephone poles have anchors to keep them from falling over. This is kind of the same idea. The overall height will be about 100 meters in height, and that includes all the antennas as well as the lightning rod. It's quite, 100 meters high, but it's quite thin. It measures about 3 meters, if not less, consistently all the way through. And in terms of, the antennas that we will be installing initially, they're going to be 3 3G antennas and 6 4G antennas. And for coverage purposes, they're generally mounted as close as possible to the top of the tower. In terms of color and lighting, we attest that the antenna system will be consistent with and comply with Transport Canada and Nav Canada safety requirements. So a determination hasn't been made at this point whether or not it'll require special coloration or lighting. That happens later, but we certify that it will be compliant. The tower itself will reside within a compound that measures 100 square meters. So it's a little bit less than that. It's just under 10 by 10 meters square, which will have the base of the tower as well as a walk-in shelter. And then each of the 3 anchor points for those guy cables will also be protected in fenced compounds that each measure 2 by 9 meters. As far as the technical equipment, all of that resides in a walk-in shelter that resides within that compound, located at the base of the tower, and it's all within a steel wire fence, about 2.5 meters in height, and it's alarmed and all that kind of stuff. And then the access to the proposed site, so in terms of construction and servicing, Rogers will construct a gravel access road from an existing entry point on that property to be able to access the road. So there's no new entry permits required or curb cuts or anything. There's no change to the interface on the street. In terms of the coverage objectives, of course, as I mentioned, we want to improve the voice and data service in the area along Highway 32 near Sealy's Bay, further improve accuracy for E911 services. So if somebody does make an emergency call, the better. It's not a matter of just being able for that call to be able to connect to the network, but also to be able to locate specifically where it is if somebody's in distress. And as far as co-location, once this tower is built, Rogers, as long as and where possible, we're open to any sharing requests. So if, to reduce propagation of towers all over the place, rather than, having another, let's say Bell or Telus wanted to improve service in the same area instead of building a tower, across the street, so to speak, we'd be welcome to share the tower with other carriers as needed. In terms of the location of the proposed tower, and I just talked about co-location, the reason why we determined a new tower was required and we weren't able to leverage existing structures. This is a very high level map that shows the 401 corridor very well covered, both with ourselves and other carriers. But where you see the star where we're proposing, you can see there's quite a bit of a gap between that and other tower structures. So they're labeled A, B, and C. I think, D is down the 401. It's almost too far to be relevant. But A and C are existing Rogers towers that are currently underserving this area. The only other one is B, which is a Bell tower, and it's 8.7 kilometers away, and that's just not far enough to be effective. So it's really kind of a dead spot in there. This is probably going to be hard to read, but council, you should have copies of this circulated already, but this is the kind of the detailed site drawing for what's being proposed. Shows the tower structure itself and precisely where each one of those guy anchor points are going to be, as well as the access path and where it is situated on that property. So what we're proposing is that the tower be located in the northeastern portion of that property. It's set back from Highway 32 in that location. And it was also a matter of preference from the landowner. The property is used for vehicle recycling currently. So, we're pretty limited in terms of where we could have put it. So this is an aerial view, and I'll show you just a couple of visual renderings of what it will look like from street level. So you can see in the yellow is where the tower is going to be located on that property. And then you'll see the red markers 1 and number 2 are the viewpoints that we'll see in 1 second here. Both on Highway 32, of course. So view number 1 is facing south on Highway 32. And you can see, a general idea to scale of what the tower will look like from that vantage point. And then alternatively, facing north on Highway 32, what it will look like from that vantage point. And then to wrap things up, just some compliance information. Safety Code 6, this is the set of regulations that all telecoms operate within. So we attest that this and all of our installations are compliant with Safety Code 6. So any concerns about health impacts or safety impacts with this type of antenna system, this is well within what Health Canada deems to be safe. So there's no concern there. There are some links to be able to read up on that. And in terms of this consultation process, this is overseen by ISED, which is Innovation, Science and Economic Development Canada. So ultimately, they are responsible for the approval of this ultimately. So we're reviewing this with the Township now and obviously seeking your approval and asking that the Township provide its position to ISED whether or not you support this. And obviously that does take into account comments from the public and Roger's response to those comments and questions. In terms of what are reasonable and relevant concerns, and this is as deemed by ISED, so there are certain comments that are can't be factored into this type of decision. They've been deemed to be not relevant for this purpose. Or sorry, these are the relevant ones, excuse me. A little bit of an important distinction. So why is the use of an existing antenna system or structure not possible? So I kind of walk through what's in the area now and why that's not possible. Why an alternative site isn't possible. What are we doing to ensure that the system is not accessible to the general public? So kind of a safety standpoint. What are we doing to make sure to integrate the antenna into the local surroundings? So in terms of fit within the community and things like that. The questions about aeronautical obstruction marking and the steps that we've taken to ensure compliance within the general requirements document within the Canadian Environmental Assessment Act and Safety Code 6, things like that. Things that are not relevant include disputes with members of the public regarding to service in general. So if somebody has a beef with Rogers or another proponent in general, that's not relevant for this discussion. One that comes up quite often is potential impacts to property values or municipal taxes. Studies have shown there is no data that shows that there's any impact to property values, but even that aside, it's deemed to be not a relevant conversation for this. And also whether or not the Radio Communication Act, Safety Code 6, other bylaws or other legislation or procedures are valid or should be reformed. So we can't relitigate things like this every time there's a new antenna proposal, so it's deemed to be irrelevant. And that is it. And I'm sorry if that took up too much time.
No, that's great. Thank you very much. So I'll ask you to stop sharing your screen so that we can, I can see everyone, because right now I'm just at a,
Sure thing.
there we go. I've got everybody back now. Counselor Jameson and Counselor Grell, I can't see your faces just in case, but I will recognize Director of Planning first before I start taking questions.
Thank you, through your worship. I just wanted to point out that this proposal is located 250 meters from the nearest existing dwelling. There was circulation to members of the public in the area, and there was one member of the public that provided some concerns with respect to the location of the tower. They were directly in touch with the applicant, but I do believe they're on the line this evening as well, if there's any questions.
Thank you, Madam Planner. So I'll take questions from council members and then I'll go to the public. So Councillor Foti, Councillor Maybe, and if anybody else, put your hand up while they're chatting. Go ahead, Councillor Foti.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you. I know this property well enough to understand where it is and the general area around it. My question is, when you have your agreement for a right-of-way on a private property, how does that carry forward should the property sell? Do you have a written right-of-way with regards to the deeded property itself?
Yes. So when, if and when this lease is executed, Rogers registers that lease on title. So that includes both the compound and the right of access.
So just for clarity, that would show up similar to a hydro easement or pipeline or such?
Yes, it's registered on the property title.
Right. Okay. Thank you. That's it.
Sorry, Councillor Maybe, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. Great to see a tower going up in that location because there's some loss of service around the Gananoque Lake and South Lake area, which this would actually be very helpful in. And in saying that, is there any appetite for Bell or TELUS to possibly jump on your tower? Have you heard anything from them as a question? And because the range is roughly 10 kilometers, we believe, at least from a different presentation, we had that information. So that's going to encompass a good deal of area and maybe go over just touching on Singleton Lake as another touch point. And in regards to the lighting on the top of it, it's very similar to the one on Reynolds Road or the one near Gananoque. And with the airport, Gananoque Airport close at hand, with the parachutes and the light aircraft that are buzz around the lakes, I would say that it's prudent to have a light on it, and I'm pretty sure you'll end up having one that's appropriate for the red and white for the duration of the day that it required. So great to see it happening, and look forward to having better reception in that area. Thank you.
Thanks. And just to respond to your question about Bell and TELUS, to date, we have not received a request from them yet, but that often changes once the tower is constructed. So,
Any further questions for the applicant? I don't see any other counselors, so I will go to the attendees. There is currently 11 on the call. Is there anyone who would like to ask a question? Please, if so, put your hand up and I will recognize you. Seeing no hands up, I'll just make, oh, sorry, I've got one. I apologize, Mr. Sly. So we have recognized you. You just need to unmute yourself and then we can hear you speak. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just had a couple questions. Obviously, I live very close to where the tower is going to be erected. I'm curious to know, this may not be relevant to this discussion, how this will affect the operation of the vehicle recycling yard, as it's been called. And also, I'm curious to know the road leading into that property, as I understand it, is actually a township right-of-way or a road allowance. Is that correct? And that's being covered in the agreement with Rogers, the use of that roadway?
Madam Planner, can you speak to that?
Through your worship, I don't have the details of that. My understanding was this was entirely on private property. If it is in fact using a municipal road allowance, an unopened road allowance for access, there would be an access agreement required with council. So we will definitely follow up on that.
Thank you
I
for bringing
only
that up.
ask that because I know the township maintains that roadway.
Okay. Sorry, I'll let the applicant answer any other questions that were asked.
Yeah, there's no impact to to any of the roadway or anything else. The only thing that our agreement encompasses is the private property access, or the private property aspect of it. So if we had to service the tower, we would use public roadways to get there, including Highway 32 and everything else, up until we reach the private property, and then our agreement with them encompasses that.
Okay, Mr. Sly, is that all your questions?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? I don't see any other hands going up. I would just like to ask one final question, and my question to the presenter is this part of the GAP project currently being taken on by Eastern Ontario EORN regional network? I know that the GAP project has been approved, and I'm just wondering if this is part and parcel of that particular project.
Thank you for the question, Madam Mayor. Yes, it is. So that's an important distinction that obviously this time last year we wouldn't have included in this, but yes, it is part of the EORN project. So for those on the call who are less familiar, that's a joint effort with Rogers and the Eastern Ontario municipalities, as well as provincial and federal governments, to work in partnership to fund rural broadband and better network access in the rural parts of Eastern Ontario.
Thank you. And a last call for any other questions. Seeing none, I'll thank the presenter and I'll thank the attendees. And we will move forward with the next part of the agenda, which is the next agenda. We're not actually going to adjourn from this particular meeting. We'll just move on to the next meeting, and I will ask for any separate declarations of interest or general nature thereof in regards to Z-2021-008 or Z-2021-009. Are there any conflicts? Seeing no conflicts, I will move forward with 3.1 on the agenda. Madam Planner, would you like to speak to this?
Thank you. I'm just opening the report.
Sorry, I didn't mean to be so quick.
That's okay. So I am going to share my screen just so everybody can see. So this application is a zoning amendment application. The need for this application was identified. Some landowners acquired into their properties and their zonings, and it was identified that there were some mapping errors that resulted from when the bylaw was consolidated in 2007. So what you can see on these key maps is the areas that are proposed to, where the zoning is proposed to be amended. This is the subject property on Marble Rock Road. It's proposed to amend this area and this area from the RU28 zone to the RU zone. This will go from RU20 to RU, and this will remain as rural. So what's proposed is to take this back into all rural zone. The property to the south at Marble Rock Road, which is a separate parcel, actually, sorry, it's to the north, it's this parcel up here, is again proposed to remove the site-specific zoning that was consolidated on this property in error and put it into a rural zone. The other properties subject to this application at 255 Pilo Road, again, it's another mapping error. This is currently zoned RU28. The proposal is to take it back to a site-specific, or just to a rural zone, take it out of the site-specific zone. And again, on 325 and 327 Taylor Road, there's a site-specific zoning on those properties, and it's proposed to rezone them back to the rural zone. The reason for these amendments is because the zoning was incorrectly placed on these properties through the consolidation of the mapping. We've gone back and looked at the original amendments, and it was never intended to apply to these properties. Notice for these amendments was circulated in accordance with the Planning Act. All of the landowners did provide authorization for the township to advance this amendment to correct the zoning on their properties, and there has been no public input with respect to the notice of public meeting that was circulated. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, so I'll ask you to
Stop sharing.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, does anybody have any questions in regards to any of the specifics? Go ahead, Councillor, maybe.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you. So there's plenty of land use going back to rural, which is great to see. And obviously, site planning had changed, as you had indicated in the 08 or whatever the date was. So are there other properties along these roadways that would be in the same bailiwick problem if they wanted and so chose to have some amendments done to their property too? Thank you.
Go ahead, Madam Planner.
Through your worship, no. The reason that these amendments came forward is because they were site-specific zoning amendments particular to a property, but the site-specific zone was placed on the wrong properties in error when the amendments were consolidated into one document in 2007. So it's not that we're picking and choosing properties to rezone. We're correcting errors that were done with that consolidation. So this is just restoring these particular properties to the zoning that should be on them.
Excellent. Thank you.
Any further questions in regards to the reports? Are there any comments or questions or from the attendees? We'll just go. If you have a comment or question in regards to this, please raise your hand. I don't see any hands raised. So seeing none, we will move forward with an adjournment. Oh, sorry. Oh, I apologize. I have 3.2 Z-2021-009 Prince vacant land. Madam Planner, would you like to speak to that?
Just 1 second. I'll share my screen. Okay, through your worship, this is an application for zoning bylaw amendment to rezone this property on Fitzsimmons Road. It's currently a vacant property. It was resulting from a severance that was done on the lot. The zoning on the property is primarily ANSI, which is an area of natural and scientific interest. The official plan allows development in an ANSI subject to an environmental impact assessment to identify areas where there would be no negative impact on the natural feature. So in support of this application, the applicants have provided an environmental impact study that's been reviewed by the township as well as the Conservation Authority. Through that study, it identified a buildable area on the property that will not have a negative impact. So on this map, you can see the area, the extent of the ANSI designation and zoning that's in the official plan. Based on the recommendations of the environmental impact assessment, this is the area of the property that's being rezoned from ANSI to a site-specific ANSI zone to allow the construction of a residential dwelling. So the proposed zoning amendment would put site-specific provisions on this particular area of the property to allow the construction of a residential use as well as any accessory buildings. The balance of the property will remain in an ANSI zone. And this was circulated in accordance with the Planning Act to all landowners within 120 meters of the property. There was one neighbor that contacted us with some clarification with respect to what the zoning was and if there would be any impacts on the ANSI. Those questions were addressed, and if there's any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you very much, Madam Planner. Are there any questions? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Lackey.
What were the questions and what were the answers?
The question was, will there be a negative impact on the ANSI? And the response was that an environmental impact assessment had been completed to the satisfaction of the Township and the Conservation Authority, and that we were satisfied in advancing the amendment that there wouldn't be any negative impact on the natural features.
So you were happy?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions in regards to this amendment? I'll go to the public attendees. Are there any attendees that would like to ask a question or make a comment in regards to this application? I don't see any hands at this point. So with that, last call, nobody else. So now I will ask for adjournment. So I need a mover and a seconder for the adjournment, please. Deputy Mayor and Councillor Jameson. All those in favor? All those opposed? And the motion is carried. We are adjourned. And we're going to switch to our next meeting, which is the council meeting. So you'll have to go into a separate, your separate link, which is sent to you separately. So thank you for joining us, those who were joining us for the public meeting. And now we will move into council.